I know the art of fight. I know the art of war. That's all I ever studied. That's why I'm so feared. That's why they feared me when I was in the ring. Because I was an annihilator. That's all I was born for. And now those days are gone. It's empty. I'm nothing.
So that was a very emotional Mike Tyson earlier this year on his podcast, Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson, which you can see on YouTube. What I found very interesting about those statements is that he just recently started talking about wanting to get back in the ring.
I've been trying to get in. I think I'm a boxing exhibitions to get in shape. I want to go to the gym and get in shape to be able to box 3 or 4 round exhibitions.
Now, these would not be professional fights, but rather 3 to 4 round exhibitions, so perhaps to get rid of some of that emptiness that he talked about.
And now those days are gone. It's empty. I'm nothing.
Aging in general could be depressing to think about as far as your body physically breaking down and you not being able to perform the way you used to. And I could imagine it'd have to be much worse for a professional athlete, which is usually someone known for their physical gifts. Gifts that have given them recognition, gifts that have given them purpose, gifts that have helped make them successful. I think this thought process was best portrayed and vocalized in the film Rocky IV.
It's crazy how people, man, they just care about you when you're in that ring, they care about you when you're bleeding, but once you step out that ring, it's like ancient history. What happens when you're not on top? Then what? Where do we go, Stallion? Because we sure as hell can't be born again. See, we're born with a killer instinct that you can't just turn off and on like some radio. We have to be right in the middle of the action because we're the warriors. And without some challenge, without some damn war to fight, then the warrior may as well be dead, Stallion.
So for those who don't know, here's a quick rundown on Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history at the age of 20 in 1986, and went on to dominate the division up until a loss to Buster Douglas in 1990, which was one of the most shocking upsets of modern sports history. This was around the same time that problems outside the ring began to emerge, which would ultimately land Tyson in prison just a couple of years later in 1992. Roughly 3 years later, in 1995, Mike Tyson was released from prison and his comeback in boxing began. It wouldn't take long for Mike Tyson to regain the WBC title and then the WBA belt, which he would then lose to Evander Holyfield in a surprise upset, only to follow that up with a rematch that became infamous the world over and referred to as the Bite of 97. It's no surprise Mike Tyson ended up getting disqualified from that fight and his boxing license rescinded. But this would not be the last time we'd see of him in the ring. In 2002, he'd have a champion match against Lennox Lewis, which would end up being the highest grossing pay-per-view event in history at the time. Unfortunately, things did not go Tyson's way, as the fight was dominated by Lewis, who would go on to knock out Mike Tyson with the right hand in the 8th round. Now, Mike Tyson would have several less remarkable bouts until his final one in 2005, when he stunned the boxing world by quitting before the 7th round. When questioned about this, Mike Tyson said he came into the fight out of shape, didn't take it seriously, and just lost his passion for the sport. It's no surprise he then announced his retirement. So that brings us to today, 15 years later, with the passion back and an emptiness that needs to be filled. It doesn't sound like he's necessarily in it for the glory, but instead for a noble cause.
For some charity and stuff.
That's
I like to
dope.
take the money and help some homeless and some drug-affected motherfuckers, you know?
Yeah.
Just like me.
So Mike Tyson's 53 years old. What can we realistically expect? To put that age in perspective, Bernard Hopkins fought competitively until the age of 51, and George Foreman was actually able to reclaim the heavyweight title at 45 and continued boxing until 48. So there's been some interesting news ever since Mike Tyson announced his potential comeback to the ring. For example, Lennox Lewis recently spoke out and refuted Deontay Wilder's 2018 claim that he could knock out Mike Tyson. Now, I don't know if this was more of a roundabout way of tooting his own horn, as Lennox Lewis did actually knock out Mike Tyson, so saying Deontay Wilder could not, Lennox Lewis is more or less pretty much saying he's better than Deontay Wilder. But there were even more interesting comments from Tyson's former trainer, who said, "Boxing's not the same now. I guarantee that if Mike Tyson trained for 6 weeks, he'd knock out Wilder in a minute." Those are clearly fighting words. So are these the types of comments and stories just trying to build some hype for Tyson's comeback? Possibly. Though I believe the curiosity factor alone will garner enough interest, from not only fans of the sport, but the general public as a whole. Mike Tyson is one of those sports figures who transcends boundaries. He's a household name that people who don't even follow the sport know. Add to that, people just love a comeback story. I believe part of it's because deep down, everyone wants their own comeback story, and if they can vicariously live through and witness another person pull it off, well, it gives them a sense of hope that perhaps they can as well. Going back to Tyson's former trainer's comments about boxing not being the same now as it was, he's clearly right in many ways, One of the more obvious is just the physical. Although the heavyweight boxing division has not grown in popularity since Mike Tyson's heyday, it's clearly grown in physical size. I mean, the Klitschko brothers are between 6'6" and 6'7", Deontay Wilder is 6'7", and the Gypsy King Tyson Fury is 6'9", nearly a foot taller than Mike Tyson, who stands at 5'10". Even in his own era, Mike Tyson was always a smaller heavyweight. For example, Buster Douglas, the first man to beat Tyson, was 6'4". Evander Holyfield was 6'2", and Lennox Lewis was 6'5". Although a lot of people think of raw punching power when it comes to Mike Tyson, partly due to all the knockouts and early round finishes he was able to muster, it was really his speed that was an advantage and what ended up catching and finishing people. In fact, it's his speed that he still has to today. In addition to that, it's his footwork, it's the angles he's able to work in order to get in close and pummel his opponent's body that makes him so dangerous. Tyson Fury said in a recent interview that Mike Tyson in his prime would absolutely destroy modern heavyweights at the top of the division, like Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, claiming those men have no defense. So anyway, let me know in the comments section if you're excited to see Mike Tyson make a comeback and who you'd potentially like to see him pitted against. Bear in mind, this will not be a professional fight, this will be for charity. It'll be an exhibition match. But with that said, anything can happen.
What are you guys doing? This is supposed to be an exhibition! You understand?